So what we're going to do over here is we're just going to say we're going to let cotan, or let x, sorry, equal cotan theta. And then we're going to come back over here and just rewrite the question as a quadratic. 2x squared plus 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. I had a person yesterday ask me, well, how do I know to use the quadratic formula or not to use the quadratic formula? As soon as you start to get into some phase of the problem in which this might be somewhat hard to factor, you can go right into the quadratic if you want. All right. However, if you want to test it, you can always start with this part of the quadratic formula, which is what I've always asked you to start with the quadratic anyway. All right. Don't go to the whole quadratic. Go to the discriminant. If you find the value of the discriminant and it's a perfect square, 16, 25, 49. If it's a number that you can take the square root of, that means that the original problem was factorable. So if you wanted to stop at that point in time and go back and factor it, go ahead and do that. If it's not a perfect square, it's telling you it was never factorable, and the only way you could solve it would be by formula. All right, so let's go ahead. I know my A in this case is 2, my B in this case is 3, and my C is going to be my negative 4. You know, and from that, I'm going to take it, I'm going to plug it in. I got my 3 squared, which is 9. Then 4 times my A, which is 2, times my C, which is that negative 4. You see we have the two negatives together. That's a positive. That's 16. That'll be 32, giving me 41. So is that 41 a perfect square? No. So that's telling us right now that quadratic is the only way we're going to be able to solve it. Now, you didn't do that just for nothing. That's part of your problem now. All right, so let's go to the quadratic formula. We're going to write the whole thing down. X equals minus b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And notice we got most of the formula done. If you got the discriminant, you have most of it done. So let's go ahead and plug stuff in. Minus b, my b is going to be 3, so minus 3 plus or minus the square root of what? 41. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. We good? Now remember, we're not solving a quadratic. We're solving a trigonometric quadratic. All right, so now state your two answers. One answer, I'll call it x1 is equal to negative 3. Use the plus sign, square root of 41 over 4. And my x2 is going to be negative 3 minus the square root of 41 over 4. Those are my two choices, my two answers. We good with that? All right, and again, and at any point in time, if you guys want to, you can go back. This is, like I said, this is being recorded right now. Click on YouTube, go to the channel. You can see this all done slowly again, you know, at your own pace. What was x? What did we let x be? Cotangent. Here's where you pull it back. Here's where you make it a trigonometric problem again, once you get x by itself. So now I'm going to pull that cotangent back. So I have cotan of theta is equal to negative 3 plus the square root of 41 over 4. Over here I have cotan theta is equal to negative 3 minus the square root of 41 over 4. What do you think my next step is going to be? Calculate. Let's go find out what that is. All right, can anybody help me find the value for negative 3? Negative 3 plus the square root of 41 over 4. Catherine, can you work on that for me? Yeah, I would go negative 3 plus the square root of 41, and then just hit equals, and then divide that value by 4. Give me 4 decimal places. 0.8508. All right, so it's a positive value. It's 0.8508. Okay. Now, what do? Good. It's really, this is over 1. What function in our calculator do you have to help me find this value? Which function is the cotangent related to? Tangent. So now I'm going to bring the tangent and get the tangent involved. So this is going to be tan theta is equal to, what happens on this side now? We're going to flip it. Okay? So this becomes 1 over 0.8508. All right? Now what is happening? I'm going to move my paper up. What is happening now? What's our next step? Now we need the angle. Once we have the exact trig function that we're going to be using. Now we need the angle. So on this side, I can say the measure of my angle of theta is going to equal, over here it's going to be what? Tan? What? Tan -1. And then this is the value you plug in. I wouldn't even, divide these two. If you wanted to, you can divide those two and come up with a nicer value. All right, so what I'm trying to tell you is, even though we're dealing with cotan, we got to relate it back to one of the three trig functions our calculator is going to help us with. So go through it all the way down, and once you know what the tan is, or cotan is, you can bring in the tangent and then flip this side, because that's the relationship between those two functions. Now you're down to here. The answer here is going to be the answer to the original, because you did everything you needed to do. All right, you're one step away, so plug this in the calculator. Let's say I wanted it to the nearest tenth of a degree. What is the measure of angle theta? 39.6 degrees. Point what? 49. Oh, sorry, 49. 49.6 degrees. Okay. Are we done? No. We're done with that side in terms of coming up with the acute angle. Now let's go find out my possible answers. Okay, because remember, we're dealing with a circle. Most of these problems are going to be from 0 to 2 pi, or from 0 to 360. So, say that again? Well, now we find out whether we can accept that answer or not. So I'm going to go to ASTC. ASTC. Okay, and now where do I go? I go back up here or here. It really doesn't matter which step you go to. I'm coming back up here, and now the last thing you have to ask yourself is, was the cotangent or tangent positive or negative? Positive. Talk to me about location. If those functions are positive, where could we be? Quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. Those two spots. So since I can be in quadrant 1, can I accept 49.6 as an answer? Good. That's one of my answers. Now what we have to do is we have to go to quadrant 3, and we need to get an angle in quadrant 3, like this one, that is 49.6 degrees from the x-axis, because now that becomes my reference angle in that quadrant. So how do I find that out? Add 180 to it. So the answers over here, the measure of angle theta would equal, we're going to accept 49.6 degrees, and we add 180 to that, we'll be at what? 2.6. All right, that's this side. All right, what I want you to do right now is I want you to kind of go to the other side. See if you can get those other two answers on your own. All right, I'm going to put this on pause while you do that. All right, see if you can go ahead and try to work for a couple minutes and get that. Those two answers, try to replicate the same thing. This is what I'm asking you to do over here. So what are we doing? Bring this down and get me a number. Once you get me a number that's a decimal, bring in the tangent and flip that. All right? Then you're going to try to find the angle, and then you're going to try to find location, and then you're going to give me the answer. Not a problem. Did we get through it? We did? Okay, so here we go. When we go back to this thing now, same thing. I'm going to say cotan of theta is equal to, when we took -3 minus the square root of 41 over 4, what decimal did we get? Did we get a decimal point? 2.3508. Take it about 4 places just to make sure you don't, give yourself an error. Or if you don't go out at least 4 places, you might have an error if we're going nearest 10th or nearest 100th. Next step is to get the tangent involved, right? So tan of theta is going to equal 1 over this, 2.3508. So now we can get the measure of angle theta, which is going to equal tan inverse of 1 divided by 2.3508. So the measure of angle theta is going to equal what? Anybody? What is it? 23 point. Okay, 23.0. Okay, so 23. So we get 23 degrees as an angle. Now we got to come back up here. Remember, every time we do this, we have to think about, the sign of things right now. And yeah, I think this should be negative, no? Okay, all right. Sorry. So we'll look at signs. So this will be a negative. This will be a negative. Okay, so now we got 23. Again, always plugging in a positive here. So once you do this piece, once you come down to this step, this is going to be entered in as a positive number. All right, let's get the acute angle in the first quadrant and then see if we can use it. So now I'm at ASTC, and since it's a negative value as you go back up to here, what quadrants can we be in? Second and the fourth quadrant, which means I can't accept the measure, I can't accept the 23 degree angle. So I can't accept it, but I'm going to use it. And how do I use it? I need an angle in the second quadrant that's 23 degrees from the x-axis, and I need an angle in the fourth quadrant that's 23 degrees in the x-axis. So the measure of angle theta, what's that? So
180 degrees. Since we're taking it from both sides, so 23 degrees from the x-axis. So it acts as a line.
No, don't connect them. Yeah, no. All you're going to do right now is, once you draw them, I'm interested in just tell me from the standard position what that angle is, and then what is that guy going to do. All right, so that's what we're doing. So to find the first one is going to be 180, and then you're going to subtract 23, and what do we get? We get 157. And the next one would be 360, 337. All right, and like I said, let's answer the question now formally. The measure of angle theta is going to equal, let's put my answers in numerical order, 49.6, comma, 157, comma, 229.6, comma, and 337. You get 4 answers to this problem, and we're done. Questions on that?